This is Meredith for Real, the Curious Introvert, and I'm Meredith. Around here, we explore taboo questions and societal blind spots. My mission, and yours if you choose to accept it, is to inspire curiosity by exploring the nuance and paradox of our world. Each episode is different, so bring your ADD and your earbuds and have a look around. Could psychedelics help you process grief? That is the question that my guest so beautifully walks us through in this episode. You'll hear how psychedelic-assisted therapy is different from traditional talk therapy, how it may help not just the combat veteran or trauma survivor, but the functional griever. You know, the kind that goes to work every day, acts like everything is fine, but may have panic attacks out of nowhere. You'll also hear his take on my own experience with psychedelics and different types of medicines for different types of grief. If you end up liking this episode, you'll also like the one with the death doula asking if talking about death is morbid or sacred. That's episode 278. Lastly, I'd like to invite you to be a part of my private Facebook group. In there, I post content that I don't share anywhere else. You can talk to me directly about past and future episodes, and I even do occasional giveaways. You can search MFR Curious Insiders on Facebook or click the link in the show notes. I hope to see you in there. All right, friends, keep it curious. When we think about the cycle of grief, most of us have specific and widely accepted mile markers in mind, announcing the passing of a loved one, a memorial, a funeral, and then life after. For most, the jump from funeral to life, as usual, feels strange, empty, unsettled. So what if the missing link were insights from a psychedelic trip? My next guest is an ordained Buddhist monk, poet, and clinical psychedelic psychotherapist. In addition to working extensively with first responders, he's a psychological consultant for SWAT Command and a member of a crisis negotiation team. In his new book, Truth Medicine, he details how psychedelic-assisted therapy has helped many find peace, purpose, and healing after loss and trauma. Today, he's going to share his insight and expertise as we ask the question, can psychedelics help us grieve? Practical psychonaut, functional researcher, dog dad to Bruce, Dr. Michael Sapiro. Thanks for being here.
That's awesome. Thank you for mentioning Bruce.
We got to give Bruce a shout out. You know, our animal friends help us in more in ways than we know.
More than most medicines do, truly.
So tell us how psychedelic psychotherapy can help us grieve in ways that traditional therapy just misses the mark.
I don't know if they miss the mark. I don't know if they go deep enough and hit what needs to be hit inside of ourselves. Talking alone isn't enough. And traditional talk therapy generally is talking, right? We're talking about what we've lost and how it impacts us. What we really need to do is access the gut and the heart, the feelings in our body. And so often we kind of miss that. And psychedelics generally bring things forward that are often hidden or undiscovered or repressed or denied, because the potential of the medicine is to bring things beyond our boundaries and beyond our defenses. Because while we're still talking, we can kind of defend ourselves. You know, I'm not really going to say the hardest thing. Under the influence of medicine, most people end up saying the hardest thing. And saying the hardest thing is the medicine, not the psychedelic.
Have you thought much about what the mechanism is that makes it work like that?
Like, you mean like neurobiological mechanism, or what mechanism?
I think so. Well, in my mind, I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of someone who is completely psychedelically naive, right? And so they might be wondering, okay, is it the neurobiological component, or is it like something spiritual? Yeah. They might kind of have a hesitancy that stems from just that really gray area.
Yeah. We can't really say how they work. We can say what we know up to this point in our evolution of science with the fMRIs and MRIs, EEGs. We can kind of see what's happening when someone is on a psychedelic. And that's somewhat cool. And it gives us some data of, okay, the brain is working this way without psychedelics and is working this way with psychedelics. There's the concept of the default mode network, which is how our brain's naturally operating in the default way. That's how we reflect on ourselves and the narratives we have about ourselves. And then when you put a substance in your mind or your brain, it changes that and it gives you a whole new perspective of yourself, of the world. So you start thinking differently. And that's a very important component of healing is when you start thinking differently. The reason we suffer the way we do right now is because we continue a loop of thinking that perpetuates our suffering. So we have to have something that interrupts it to gives us a new perspective or experience of ourselves. And so we have data that it does that neurologically. And of course, some of the chemicals that are put out with the drugs give us different feelings, which we need to have new feelings about ourselves. So if you have a feeling toward loss that's based in shame, you're going to be stuck in the shame. But if you can get a feeling that's loving and tender and nurturing about the same loss, you're going to have a shift.
New thoughts and new feelings. I'm kind of seeing why people say that these sorts of sessions are like 10 years of therapy in one.
Yeah, because it gives you a full new experience that you couldn't have imagined or you might have been denying or repressing. We all can have these experiences. I could lead you right now through an experience inwardly, like using meditation, where you can touch on something profound and deep, which you might have pushed away before. But the medicines make it very apparent that you're pushing it down. The medicines make it very accessible. That's why I like working with ketamine. It brings things forward that you have been denying, like grief for the most part.
So when I think of people who might seek out psychedelic psychotherapy for grief or trauma, I think of really extreme cases. But what about for the functional griever, the person that's just, they went back to work during whatever, the 1.3 days, whatever's average there in corporate America. They seem fine on the outside. Is this something for them?
Can we pause that question? I want to talk about grief with you first, because I think what we're talking about in this moment is like, oh, we had a loss and then we're grieving. Most people are walking around with untended grief all the time. And it's not just about loss of a loved one, or it's so much wider than that. And I don't think we talk about that at all. What I'd like to talk about with you is really the grief of loss of innocence, the grief of ideal parents we wish we had, grief around losing our potential due to injury, illness. There's so many ways we grieve that we don't talk about. So when people come to me, oh, maybe they got divorced or there's a loss of something. But really, when we start tracing, how do you grieve? We never learned to grieve properly from a long time ago when we lost our innocence as a child.
When you paint it like that, that's really like a whole society of grieving people,
Yes,
right?
100%. That's what most people go to a store and sense what people are feeling. And it's loss of self-esteem, loss of self-worth. We don't think about it this way, but when I'm allowed to dig inside somebody, what they're really showing is a pain of not being good enough, a pain of having to grow up too quickly, of not being able to play when they had to, take care of their siblings. That's all grief. And it hurts. And we walk around hurt and we don't even know why we're hurting until we start looking.
One of my listeners, her husband recently passed away. And I asked her, if there's anything that she would like me to ask you. And she asked, what stage of grief is this the most beneficial for? And as you were describing these different flavors of grief, and I was picturing myself walking through the produce aisle at a grocery store, I was thinking about how even the idea of stages might be backwards. Can you talk about that?
What's actually present for you right now is the most important stage you're at. The person who developed that actually had to regret that she created some stages, and it really created a protocol. It created a condition that we think about, oh, where am I in that state? It's like, how about we leave all that and we just go to our gut, our belly, and we feel where we're at right now. I feel there's shame there when I think about my divorce, or there's resentment when I think about this. And so what I would say is to that listener and anybody else is slow down and think about the loss and feel your body's response. And also hear what you're saying about it. I'm so fucking angry. Why did they have to leave? Okay. Or I didn't get to say the things I needed to say, or I've been hurt by that person. And I never really got to stand up for myself. Who knows?
Anger is an interesting one because we don't often, I don't know, I don't hear it a lot in the mainstream, as a part of grief. Like, I'm mad that this person died. It's just definitely not on Hallmark cards.
Mhm.
But in your work, you hear a lot of that.
Yeah, and relief. How about relief? I
Oh,
had one client say, yeah, see, that's surprising, right? I'm so
yeah.
glad my dad is not alive anymore. I hear that all the time. When people are very honest doing this work, honesty is the key. And so when you finally allow yourself to say the true thing, I'm angry or I'm relieved. One of my students, Buddhist students, said, my relationship with my dad got so much better after he died.
Mm.
I love that. How honest is that?
Mm-hmm.
My friend, I just had dinner with a friend last night, and she said after both of her parents died, and she felt relief because now she doesn't have anyone to prove herself to. How clear is that? When they're alive, it's like, oh, I got to prove myself to my dad because I needed to get love from him. And the way to do that is by succeeding. Or I needed to take care of my mom because she was always sad and sick. And now that she's gone, I feel relief. I don't have anyone to take care of, like obligated wise, You can still feel the grief, the wave of sadness for the loss, but it doesn't come with obligation or it doesn't come with resentment.
Is it so the psychedelics, whether it's ketamine or another type of medicine, they allow a person who maybe has a less of a inclination to be honest in that way to actually say the thing?
That's it. That's the mechanism.
Are there certain medicines that are more well suited for that type of process than others?
You know, I'm not sure. I've used a variety of medicines in clinical settings and then out of country where things are legal.
Mhm.
And each one definitely has different chemistry. And those different chemicals provide different feeling tones, feeling emotions, feeling secure or feeling wild. And I think it depends on the person and their need, and then the therapist when they know how to use the medicine. So different medicines really do different things because of their compounds and their makeup. So a lot of people use MDMA for trauma, but what is trauma but feeling really scared because something happened to you and not knowing how to regulate through that fear, or feeling really closed off. And then MDMA opens the heart and you're feeling a lot more connected to yourself, the world, your therapist. That could be a really powerful tool. That's not available outside of research settings. So, we got to be clear that some of these medicines are illegal outside of research settings. So we don't want to propose doing that. But you can go to Oregon or Colorado for psilocybin work. And then ketamine is generally legal throughout the states. And that's also a good one for truth telling. The reason I called my book Truth Medicine is because truth is medicine.
Hmm.
And so these different medicines can get you to speak truthfully, can get you to feel what you need to feel.
I love that you have that approach to this because there would be a temptation by lesser therapists, I'm sure, to really see psychedelics as some sort of magical pill. And you emphasize in your book that it's not. And we've only been talking for a few minutes, and you can already hear that that is not what you're about. It's about the accessing of what's already inside of you.
Yeah.
And with that in mind, I do wonder though if this process, if someone is going into this process and they're wanting to heal from something, whether it's the things that you listed earlier about loss of innocence or a lost opportunity, a life that could have been, or someone literally passed away, they might come out the other end with the benefit of healing from those things, but also a new outlook on life that could
Mhm.
feel like a reorganizing of the structure of their reality, which
Yeah.
is that something like people should know ahead of time?
Mhm.
Because I mean, I would hate for someone to come out with like ontological shock because they didn't know, but how does that work?
It's the same as any experience that changes your worldview, a accident, a death, a divorce. Those things change your whole outlook on life too. especially if you wake up from them going, have I been taking my life or people for granted?
Oh, yeah.
But in this case, it could be more profound in a way because you're also accessing the cosmos. So let's define that for the audience.
Please.
That's potentially well beyond what your personal view of the world is. And it opens up to a universe beyond that. We're still included in it, but the cosmos that includes the planets and the earth as a spinning rock in space, and other people have claimed to see entities and their ancestors have come to them on session. They've talked with fictional characters that have some kind of meaning for them, like mythological characters can show up in our sessions. You can see past and the future in ways you might not have accessed before. Are these things real? I don't know or care. The why I mean that is because it shows up, and that's real enough. We got to work with what shows up. And so a lot of times people feel the aliveness in trees and rocks that are always there, and indigenous cultures have talked about since before we had science. So are they real or not real is irrelevant. The fact that you're having the experience is relevant. And the fact that you might have a new relationship to trees, plants, animals, the cosmos, actually is relevant because it gives us a sense of belonging we might not have had in our closed off experience of just living in a meat suit. We're so much more than this thing. And medicine wakes us up to that. So yeah, you might get shocks and you might have to realign and rediscover who you are afterward. 100%.
Yeah,
I know.
That's a good point. No, I love all of that. Yeah, it's awesome. I am reflecting on my own psychedelic experiences with mushrooms, and I want to share this in case people are like, okay, we get it. You hallucinate. Whoop-de-doo. Like it feels really real. And I don't mean like I see a person. I mean, it's different for everyone. But for me, I feel like I have spent time with a person. Like both times, it was like a consciousness other than my own was present with me. And it does change you. I love how you said closed off, because the opposite of that is how you feel afterwards, even well afterwards. Even like in meditation sessions, I felt like the mushrooms, air quotes, visited me and showed me things. And it felt like, oh, that thing or that person, whatever it is here again. Oh, okay, hi, and it's almost just like by the experience itself, it does shake things up.
And it's supposed to that actually neurologically, that is the default mode network being turned off. Default mode, meaning we are closed and isolated in our bodies and mind systems, and other people are others. The planet is other. Animals are other. We are inside, and maybe our kids or our pets get inside a little bit. Most of the time we're a closed system and everything is other. You have an experience on mushrooms and all of a sudden other and you are the same, or other is inside and you are inside other. And you have a bigger system now of you as other as you. That changes the system in your brain. You now go, I'm not alone or isolated. Everything actually is connected in certain ways, which is true, which is actually true. There's no fundamental difference between us and stars, except we have our consciousness, and who knows what stars have, if anything. But the material is the same. The matter is the same. And we start recognizing that in our experience in the medicine, and then we integrate that in our daily life. That's more important to me now. How do you use that information? Well, if I know I'm interdependent and interconnected with the planet and other people and other cultures and animals, I can't fundamentally hurt them because it's hurting myself. This is a fundamental shift that medicine can give us.
That is fundamental. What would be the consequences of not processing grief? I'm asking this for the person that's listening and thinking, all right, you two. We get it.
Get the smoke before you got here.
Exactly. Like I'm picturing, that person like, that's cute. But you know what? I'm all set. You can keep that. What are the consequences of unprocessed grief?
Depression. It hurts. Listen, everything I'm saying here ends up being practical. I'm sure I'm a little woo-woo, but I'm also grounded in science. And I want everything here to have meaning for the listener. Even the cosmic perspective gives us a sense of belonging. When we don't process grief, we end up feeling very alone and isolated because we're not even tending to ourselves. We are literally distancing from our own pain. And that is depressing, and it causes us anxiety. That's what anxiety and depression for me end up looking like, starting from, is that we are not tending to ourselves. That's one of the consequences. We feel isolated, alone, and we continuously feel pain. But it influences our behavior. It influences our thoughts with ourselves and other people. We become resentful. We blame either ourselves or others. There is a lot of consequences of not tending to our grief and thinking we're fine when we're not fine. We might use drugs, alcohol, shopping, sex to numb those feelings of untended grief. One of my SWAT guys, when he finally started touching grief, he would feel it arising, and then he would want to push it down because he's like, it's like throwing up. You don't really want to do it. You don't want to throw up. It's disgusting. But once you finally do, you get so much relief. It's the same with grief. You feel it welling up. I have permission to share the story. Very successful, intelligent entrepreneur in her late 30s came to me because she was having panic attacks. And it was something new for her because she was fairly grounded, she said, and didn't really experience, big emotions. Gives me a clue when the people tell me that. I'm really calm. I'm really grounded. I'm like, yeah, we'll see. We'll see what that means in real life. And so she's like, I'm having these panic attacks, and they started about a year ago. I don't know what's going on with me. What's wrong with me? What happened a year ago? Well, my brother died from a brain tumor. I was in a car accident. My grandmother died. I'm like, so what's wrong with you? She goes, I don't know. But when I'm alone or I just start panicking, I'm like, what have you done with your grief? I don't grieve. I haven't grieved. I'm like, why haven't you grieved? Those are terrible things. You just mentioned 3 significant things: a loss of a sibling, a loss of a caregiver archetype, grandmother, a real one, and then the archetype of the caregiver. And then you were in a significant car accident, which is scary, and you could have died. Where's grief in all this? She goes, I can't tolerate those feelings. Of course, so when you can't tolerate those feelings, how is it going to come out? By panic in some, in others might be despair and spiraling down into shame or hopelessness. It depends on the person. But, she's not coming for panic. She's coming because panic is a symptom of untended grief. So we spent a year in ketamine therapy and coaching, basically, or however long we worked together, accessing the deep well of grief and letting it actually flood her first. And then she learned how to tend it. And so fast forward, we've done our work together. A year has passed since her brother's passing. She met with her family, and she was driving home from her family. And she goes, I didn't grieve all weekend, a little bit of sadness, but I felt really good. And I was able to keep most of it down. And then in the car on the way home, I felt that old panic arising. But I knew that was a sign that there were underlying emotions. So I pulled the car over, and I was able to really let the emotions flood through me and really be natural. So panic is now a signal to her that there's untended grief needing to arise. So instead of focusing on, I better calm down the panic, what she can do is go, I must have feelings that need to be tended to. There's sadness, that whole weekend with her family, reminiscing. I just needed to cry. And then she could drive on, literally, in her life and metaphorically, right?
Yeah.
Most of the symptoms people are listening to are signs that something is untended inside themselves. And we spend so much money and time focusing on the symptoms, but not the origin. We want to go to the origin of those symptoms and then tend to that. Most of the time, it's untended grief.
I think when people imagine a ketamine therapy session or, even just a regular therapy session, they might be tempted to picture just a container to fall apart, like permission to cry. And that is the grieving. That's the getting it out. But you keep saying the word tend to, which is that the same as like integration afterwards? It like a skill, a bunch of tools in a toolbox to kind of help after the fact?
Tending is an action that we want to do now and later. It's when a child falls and scrapes their knee, you don't talk them out of their pain, you tend them through their pain. So I teach people how to tend to the pain as it arises so that when they leave the session, and we do that in ketamine sessions, like, oh, there it is. There's that deep welling of pain. Can you bring your hands in? Can you tend to yourself and hold yourself? We can also go back in the past and tend to the original wound, going back to the child who is hurting the most, and tend to them, sit next to them, hold them. Well, we have to do that with ourselves too. These are the two best instruments we have for healing is our hands here. And we place them on our belly and our chest, and we learn to just come right in and tend to the pain as it's flooding, not to stop it, but to love ourselves through it. And then we use that moving forward.
Is there any risk of people plummeting into a deeper state of sadness or potential suicidality from psychedelic psychotherapy?
Maybe. I mean, there's all kinds of risks. We have to be aware of all of them. And there's no way to be aware of all of them. We have to be open to the risks. So yes, potentially after a ketamine session, you might feel your baseline that you came in with very acutely for the days after. That is something I say after every ketamine session, at least the first one. Hey, you might leave here feeling or perceiving you're feeling worse than when you came in. In most cases, that is you being aware of your baseline because ketamine helps you become really aware of yourself. And so you're leaving, maybe you're expanded and calm, and you might be expanded and calm for the next few days like you just felt here, but you might contract back into your old self, and you're more aware of it, and it's going to feel like it's worse, but it's most likely just what you've always experienced for the most part.
There was a point in your book where you share about going into the woods and you were smoking marijuana, and it was just kind of like the self-guided nature moment that led to a lot of like really great deep insights. I loved that you shared that because one, it was such a beautiful picture of the nuance of, medicines and how they can be used. In light of what you just said about, you can feel like a deeper sadness, how would a person assess whether self-guided or maybe guided by like a psychotherapist trained in psychedelic therapy? How would they know which one of those would be the best for them?
How do they do on alcohol? I would be like, are you able to sit with yourself during an experience? And how are you when you have lack of control? Are you able to sit and watch it? Can you sit and take care of yourself? All right, I was able to get myself home that night. I knew I was drunk, but I was able to be with myself. I even got myself to the bathroom and threw up and did all the things I needed. And this is an interesting question because I don't want to prescribe something for the listeners and go, well, he said if I'm a good drunk, I can do it.
Right.
In some way, it's a complete lack of control or a loss of control. How do you do with loss of control? And by the way, the story about me smoking weed in the forest was way before I worked with the police department, just to put it out there.
Just in case they're listening. Yeah.
In case you're listening, that was before. That's true, actually. I can't use it anymore, of course. But I grew up doing psychedelics. I was 15 years old when I started doing acid. And I would go to school and be on acid at times. I had to have a really good sense of self-awareness and ability to stay cool while the trip was happening in school. So I trained myself over the years to be on a high dose of something, and this is again in the past, and be fully conscious and aware and awake during it. Not everyone has that ability, nor should they have the ability. It's a training and a skill set. So are you able to be okay letting go of control? For most people, they're not. It's very scary to lose control and to be. Now, that doesn't mean people who are doing recreation always lose control. So There's a lot of people doing mushrooms and acid that don't lose control and are fine. Yes, maybe you can guide yourself. No, and maybe if you're scared, have someone with you to help you through it. I think that's the long answer. I don't know if I answered you.
I think you did. I think you did.
No.
What about micro versus macro dosing, whether it's guided or not? Is there a benefit to one or above the other when it comes to processing grief?
A microdose is a little bit of, it's like homeopathy. You give a little bit of the thing to build up a response within you. And a little bit of mushrooms apparently gives a little bit of serotonin, and you feel like you're on a little bit of an antidepressant. I don't recommend it or not recommend it. That's outside the scope of what I do as a clinical psychologist, and it's illegal. So I can't say use it, don't use it. I want to be clear that I don't do that work in real life. Not just telling you here I don't do microdose or not microdose because it's illegal and people have to come to that on their own. But it's a medicine. It's like taking a little bit of an antidepressant, but it's the natural version of it because it's a mushroom. And it does seem to have some good impact. We don't have enough data to really talk about, like enough scientific research to talk about it. We're building it. I think they say we have micro results on microdosing. That's what they're saying right now. But it's not about the medicine. It's about, are you willing to address your grief?
I like that a lot. I want to go back to something you said earlier that I suspect many people are unfamiliar with, archetype. So grief and identity. Talk to me about how the two can become fused together.
Oh, yeah. There was a woman who lost her daughter to a motorcycle accident, and she then identified as a grieving mother.
Ah.
That's what she stuck to. She was stuck there. Nothing wrong with grieving your daughter. That's healthy. That's normal. What was unhealthy is pairing your identity as a grieving mother. That means you won't allow yourself to let go of the grief. You won't allow yourself to stop bereaving, because if you did, you would be going against the identity you've crafted, your persona. That's unhealthy to have a persona of one who's perpetually grieving, because you're stuck. You won't allow yourself to move forward. That means you can't have joy. You can't play, because you can't play while you can. Of course, you can play while you're grieving. You can have joy while you're grieving. That's true. When you experience grief fully, you also get joy and happiness too. They come together. No emotion is without its opposite. The problem for us is when you're stuck in one emotion, you don't allow yourself to have the other. So the archetype of the grieving mother is very limiting, and it's a prison. How can I have joy? How can I go out and dance? My daughter died. Yes, 12 years ago. I would be hurting her in some way. Like I would be disrespectful or dishonoring of my daughter if I stopped grieving. That's an interesting belief that you're punishing yourself with. Why are we doing that? We have to look at that, dismantle it. The grief is beautiful and pure. I don't want to stop that. But what you've done is paired, and now you're stuck.
You also said in your book that dropping into a psychedelic therapy session without preparing can be pretty confusing. I loved that you made it analogous to going to Trader Joe's without a shopping list. I was like, this man gets me. How would you recommend someone prepare for this? Maybe they're listening right now and this is part of their preparation. What would be next for them?
So there's two ways of thinking about prep for me. One is, what does your heart want from this experience? What do you want out of this experience? What will it help heal? And how will you grow? Like, that's one side of prep, is like, what am I doing here? And why am I about to do this? And we're talking therapeutic sessions. People might just want to have fun, open up, relax, dance. That's recreational. That's a different kind of prep that you can do. Hey, I'm doing this just to have fun and relax or become one with nature. But if we're talking therapeutic, why are we doing this? What needs healing and where do you want to grow? That's one side. The second side is, how do you prepare to meet the mystery of life? How do you prepare for the unknown? How do you get yourself ready to lose control or give up control? So one is a process of reflection, and one is an actual process of preparing for a journey. And those are both equally important for preparing.
Okay. Is there medical conditions that would cause people to be like, it would not be advised that they participate?
Yeah, I would say that's the third leg, is get the intake and the screening. So thank you. So you're prepping for, why am I doing this? What do I want? You're prepping for, how do I lay on a river blindfolded and let the river take me somewhere? Because you don't have a choice once you start it, and the medicine will do with you what it wants to. The third thing is this good for me? Am I prone to mania, or do I have a thought disorder like schizophrenia, or am I acutely suicidal? Or do I have liver conditions? Or do I have high blood pressure? That's a part of the prep process as well, is getting a good medical screening, a good psychiatric screening. You know, we're in the Wild West. Just come to Jamaica and get high and okay, maybe, but then, is that right for your body? Is that right for your physiology? Is that right for your personality? Do your research and also talk to medical professionals who know about those things. So anybody who comes to see me gets a screening. At our clinic, we have an amazing staff, and they screen for medical and psychiatric conditions that contraindicate, that are not good for the person. And if they go on retreat with me, I have an amazing psychiatric nurse who does the screening. She's trained as a psychedelic psychiatric nurse and does all the screenings. I want to make sure the person coming it's safe for them. That's the first priority. So if you're listening, your safety is your first priority. Make sure that any medicine is okay for you to take based on your body and your mind.
So it sounds like red flag, green flag. A green flag would be that there is a medical screening, and a red flag would be like, just give me your credit card.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Let's go to Costa Rica and let's go do ayahuasca, and we're not prepping you. You just come, and that's like a flag for me. I don't want people to have I want them to suffer. I want you to suffer. I want people to have challenges while you're on medicine, because how you greet the challenge and how you learn to greet a challenge is healthy. But I would want you to be informed about who's running this thing. Do they take your medical health and history seriously? Do they take your psychiatric health seriously? And some people are like, well, I kind of lied to get there. I'm like, well, that's on you. And then you had a bad experience because you actually bullied yourself into something without considering your own well-being.
And it sounds like you're recommending, when it comes to ketamine at least, in-office therapy as opposed to, here is a brown bag of ketamine, go home and take it.
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Look, I've done enough things in my life to know you can do that. You can go home and try it. First of all, the rate of addiction is higher when you're doing ketamine at home. It's very low rate of addiction in a clinic. So there's that. And then, yes, of course, you can do things on your own. So many people listening are like, I've already done drugs on my own. I'm fine. Okay, then try something out. Yes, I'm not telling you to. I am not liable for any listener doing anything after this conversation, by the way.
Yes.
Okay. You should please put that in bold print.
I will. We'll make it big.
Yeah. Dr. Mike's not telling you to do anything. I'm just talking. I like a person who wants to dive deep, but also wants someone to help them. Yes, the medicine can show you so much on its own. You don't need a therapist to have a benefit of the medicine. But if you want to really go deep and have someone help lead you into that, then yes, the therapeutic side is there's a benefit of having a guide, and there's a benefit of having a therapist with you. This is still very new in our culture, so there's not many of me around to do this work, but they are there. Again, this is just the model I'm teaching, which is psychotherapeutic, psychedelic psychotherapy. But I do believe there's benefit to just doing the medicine alone also. Of course there is. I'm just talking about one kind of therapy where you have someone guiding or doing therapy with you.
Well, I think this is an important discussion for many reasons. One, you hit on right out of the gate, which was that grief doesn't have to be this formulaic thing of somebody passes away and then that's grief. It can be a complex soup of all kinds of things, as is our lives. And two, I think this conversation is important because for those that grew up with heavily stigmatized visions of what psychedelic use looks like, the idea that it could be beneficial for mental health could be a new thought. And I really love the way that you outlined that in your book because I told you this off air, but I'll say it again for the benefit of the listener. I've read a lot of books and quite a few are written by researchers. And so when I cracked this bad boy open, I 100% thought I was going to have like academic experience about, research and outcomes, and which I would have loved. But I loved that it wasn't just that. It really was more about the transformation of what's possible and the transformation that you've witnessed in so many people, and why I think that this could be part of that prep process if someone does decide to sit with medicine with a professional for therapeutic purposes, is because it kind of allows you to paint yourself into the picture.
Can you say more about that? I love that line. Paint yourself into the picture. What do you mean?
Yeah, well, so many of the people that you work with embody this machismo, I guess, archetype, right? I'm learning to say this word correctly now, that you wouldn't really think of as a guy who is like feeling his feelings. And you also, I think we also kind of live in a busy culture where we picture like walking it off or like working through it as a legit way to process things. And to witness the men in this book stop and unpack what it is that they're going through. Like the man that was like rolling on the floor and he was kind of having flashbacks of what had happened to him. The people in the book are the guys in the action movies in my mind, right? And so that's like the vision. Now you're in my head officially. So that's kind of what I see. And then to paint this picture of them like really being whole in a way that as a woman, I would embrace that, but I wouldn't expect the action hero in the movie to do. And so I think that's why it's so beautiful, because it makes it like, oh, this is for everyone.
Yeah, and there are more stories than just first responders or combat vets, special ops. There's a lot of variety of community members also finding their truth and also moving toward authenticity, and then healing the untended grief that so often underlies so much of our pain. So I tried to have a variety of stories in there for readers. This book is so much more than psychedelic stuff and talking about mechanism. It's really about waking up to what's true to us inside and then living that. Because those of us who are finally recognizing our truth and speaking it and living it, our depression and anxiety goes way down naturally, because we're no longer repressing ourselves. We're no longer depressing ourselves or scared to be ourselves. We're more confident and empowered. And that's what the whole process is leading us toward, is embodiment, empowerment, confidence.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me and for writing the book. Can you tell people where they can buy the book and stay in touch with whatever's next for you?
So you can find that book on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, all the places. And of course, you can go to my website, michaelsapiro.com, or I guess Instagram. I don't really focus on that too much. I'm working in a lot. But the book is the gift I'm giving to the world right now. So that would be the best way to. And also, I read it. The audiobook is me reading it.
Oh, I love that.
So a lot of personal stories in there that I actually kind of cried a little bit over. And I said, please keep that in there. Don't take that out.
I love that. Well, thank you again. This has been a fantastic, fantastic discussion.
Thank you so much for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening. If you liked this episode, you'll also like the one with the death doula asking if talking about death is morbid or sacred. That's episode 278. And stay tuned next week when I talk with Dr. Jeffrey Kripal about how to think impossibly about souls, UFOs, time, belief, and everything else. Until then, keep it curious.